Collaborative sends out an email, and I have like 3 different links. I have to remember which one to click. So, all right, we're live on YouTube. Good afternoon. My name is Sean McGuire. I'm the Executive Director at the Albany County Land Bank. It is 2:34 p.m. on Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. We're calling to order a meeting of the Land Bank's Executive Committee, and we're holding this meeting remotely per New York State Open Meetings Law. This meeting is available on the Land Bank's YouTube channel for listening and viewing. Today on the call participating in the committee, we have all 4 members of the committee, including Charles Toohey, Sam Wells, Joe Seaman-Graves, and Natisha Alexander. We have also from the staff, everybody joining us, Shelby, Susan, Lillian, Jason, and myself. Lynette is off this week. And the agenda was circulated to the committee ahead of time. It contains a number of items. The first is a review of the minutes from October. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any questions, suggestions, or amendments to the minutes as presented? And if not, I just need a motion to approve those.
To me, all I have on my screen have the minutes in it. All it has is the financial report. I don't have the minutes.
All right, we'll send those around. We'll just do that next month then.
But everybody
Yes.
else, do they have?
Nope, I don't have the minutes either, Charlie.
Okay.
Open the attachment
We'll
for the committee. There's no minutes there.
Okay, we'll get those out for next month then. All right, we have we'll have to set that aside. We'll have a review and approval of financial reports for October. I'll walk through those with you. So we'll start with we'll do the statement of financial position first, and then the statement of activities, or the activity statement. So as of October 31st, the Land Bank reports total assets of $5.69 million. That's on line 37. A majority of those assets are in our current assets that total $5.529 million on line 29. Those assets are driven by cash and bank balances of $3.148 million. That's lines 3 through lines 8. And our property inventory is valued at $1.782 million after market adjustments, and you'll see that on lines 20 through 27. Our grant receivables stand at $321,000. Those are lines 16 through 19, and that reflects committed funding for our ongoing initiatives. Our fixed assets, which are primarily lease-related to our office, total $161,000, and that's on lines 30 through 36. Any questions on the assets on our statement of financial position or our balance sheet?
The grant receivables.
All right, I'll move on.
The grant receivables, they're
Yes.
from New York.
Right, that's primarily Phase 2, LBI Phase 2, and our LBI operations grant.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, I'll move to the liability side of the balance sheet. Our total obligations as of the end of October were $767,000. That's on line 70. That consists largely of deferred revenue of $311,000 on lines 60 through 63, and our lease liability of $157,000 on line 59. Our accounts payable and our credit card balances remain modest at $13,000, lines 42 through 46. As you know, that we try to take advantage of our payment terms and our credit cards to hold a little cash a little longer. That leaves the organization with net assets of $4.9 million on line 74, leaving a year-to-date operations reflect a net deficit of $42,000. And that's line 73. Some of that is driven, I'll talk about this, I'm going to give it away now, on our property sales, but just to give you a sense, you know, our sales pending are $324,000. So we have $324,000 in property sales that are in the pipeline and working their way to closing. So once we factor that in, you know, if we had those all closed today, we would be in a much different position. So I'm not concerned about where we are on that deficit side. It's just a matter of timing. Any questions on the balance sheet? All right, I'm going to jump over now to the statement of activities, and this is going to be the year-to-date performance. This is going to be the next page that follows the balance sheet. Our total revenue through October is $984,000. That's not line 20. It's below our budget of $3.46 million, primarily due to delayed grant reimbursements from LBI Phase 2. Grant income account for $792,000 on line 7. And our property sales contributed $74,000 net on line 12, and fee income totaled $22,500 on line 18. We're still doing well with our investment income, provided us a notable $92,000 on line 8, and donations added another $1,394 on line 19, again, year-to-date performance. Our cost of goods sold has reached $422,000 on line 61. It's well under budget, driven by lower demolition and stabilization activity. Our property maintenance costs were $172,245, that's line 43. And our insurance expenses totaled $117,937, almost $118,000 on line 53. Our sales and related costs were $23,800 on line 57, almost $23,900. Our operating expenses on line 106 were $681,403, and payroll represents the largest share at $415,538 on line 73. Professional services totaled $138,160 on line 84. And our office rent was $43,132 on line 95. Our overall operating costs came in $275,297 below our budget, and that reflects our discipline in our overall spending. We posted a net operating loss of $119,188 on line 107. That's partially offset by other revenue on line 113 of $77,128. That includes $11,202 in insurance reimbursements on line 111, and miscellaneous income of $63,842 on line 109. And again, that results in a net year-to-date deficit of $42,000 on line 115, which is an improvement compared to our prior year's performance. Overall key takeaways on both financial statements there is that we do have strong liquidity and an asset base. They provide stabilization or stability for the land bank. Our revenue shortfall is primarily timing related to major grants, and as also I noted, the more than $300,000 that's in the pipeline on sales pending. Our expense management remains effective, and our significant savings against the budget. Our net deficit is modest and it's mitigated by non-operating income. Our sales pending are also expected to bring in additional revenue, as I noted there. Any questions on the financial statements as presented? All right, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Sam, and a second, please.
Second.
Keisha, all those in favor, are any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? All right, that carries. Thank you, everybody, for that. We're going to move down to number 4, new business. What I wanted to do now that it's November, and I think next year I'd like to move this up maybe even into October, is just talk about where we are with our key performance indicators for this past year and discuss what we, if we want to just continue to hold the line on how we track and evaluate our performance, or if we want to make some adjustments along the way. So in your packet after the financial statements are a couple of pieces of information that we've gone over before and you probably are familiar with. The first is our overall mission statement and our performance goals, and then our 2024 operations and accomplishments report that we provide to the state ahead of the glossy annual report, which is in the office. It's printed, and we'll have that for you at the next meeting. But primarily what we report on, it's the same thing every month. We report on 4 key performance indicators. One is properties acquired, 2 is properties sold, The third are buildings demolished, and then the fourth are properties received through donation. And so we report those every month, and that's what we also report on our operations and accomplishment report to the state, as well as the different progress on activities here. Just thinking ahead, if I could just sort of make a shift to some of the pieces I've done. But before I do that, any questions on our current mission statement, our performance goals, or what we annually report?
No questions there.
All right. All right, thank you.
Are these
So
questions
you
on
know,
the current goals and reporting or future?
the questions on the current ones.
None here.
All right, I think are pretty basic. So I took a look at this, just shifting ahead, you know, and considering what is the purpose of our KPIs. And I noted that, you know, for us, we want to be able to measure our mission towards community revitalization, or, economic development, and neighborhood stabilization. And so our key performance indicators, our KPIs, you know, should be things that go beyond transactional metrics and reflect the impact, efficiency, and equity of the land bank. So given that our core operational metrics, as I said before, are properties acquired, properties sold, buildings demolished, and properties received through donation. But some other things that we may want to consider that would be foundational to tracking our activity and compliance would be percentage of properties that are returned to productive use and allow us to measure success in transitioning vacant properties back into active use. The average days in inventory would give us an indication of how effective we are in moving properties through the pipeline. Vacancy reduction in targeted neighborhoods that could show neighborhood level impact on blight reduction. That's both direct and indirect impacts that we might have. And I note that one's important because as we were out at 79 Elizabeth Street, something that we noticed a little bit more, and I'd like to take credit for it, it's land bank, but when we're making investments, when we're pulling permits and we're doing activity, we tend to see neighboring properties doing the same. The question is, you know, we're not doing it because we see that activity happening, but we don't know if others in the neighborhood are doing that because they see us taking action and activity. But I think we may be able to induce there's some impact there, but it's hard to capture without actually asking people that question. But it would be interesting, I think, to take a look at how our work may be impacting vacancy reduction in our targeted neighborhoods. Another one, and we have to report, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Sean, on that last one, I think it's important equally to look at the flip side of that. When we're not maintaining and we're not revitalizing, what's the impact on the blocker community? That's all I had there. Please continue.
I think that's a good point because when we went on the tour on First Street, Joe pointed out something out that was very eye opening, is that on that particular block, and that was between Judson and Lexington, we are the only blight on that
Mhm.
block.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I
we're
think getting
First
into
Street?
yeah, and getting into the broader conversation, you know, we talked about our metrics a second ago. Properties acquired, disposed of, demolished. There's a gigantic gap of what we're doing with the properties in between right now. And I know I talked to you a little bit about this the other day, but that's got to be a big focus because if we're not getting properties in, that means we're sitting on all these properties. And I know the team's working on it, but that's got to be a focus this year of what we're doing to maintain.
Yeah, I mean, and we're, Joe, if I could add, one of the things that as we're moving our information into a different system and we're taking a look at our numbers and our metrics, I would probably, I knew this, but I didn't necessarily know to the extent, but the average days in inventory of the land bank properties that we currently have is 2,600 days. I think with Susan, that was like seven plus years. So there's a lot of property that we're sitting on. So I hear what you're saying. And but how do we translate that into making a more positive impact?
Well, what you have to do is you have to create a file on each one of these properties with a recommendation. You know, you've got to get granular and say, okay, we've owned this one for so long. What are the choices? And put that all together and then bring it to the board, and we have to do something about it. But I think we just have had the time to get granular, and that's what the new staffing, I'm understanding, is to look at what we own right now and start talking about it, property by property, each one. It's almost like there's a separate remedy for each one of them.
And I think in addition to that, what Charlie mentioned is that we also need to really buckle down on how we are, what our strategy is going to be when it comes to um, restoring or repairing the relationship between the land bank and the community. Because even when we were at that property on First Street, we had someone come up and ask about the property and was very interested in the property, wasn't very familiar with the land bank application process, but did have some feelings based on what they've heard and what is out in the community, is that the land bank is not really doesn't really help the people from the community obtain properties.
Yeah, I would say that's something when I got here was something that I heard quite often. I think that we're hearing it less, but it doesn't mean that we haven't gotten into demonstrate or prove to people that what their opinion is, that we're actively trying to change that. I don't want to say their opinion's wrong, because I don't know what their experience is directly, but I think we are doing our best to try to change the perception that could be out there. But I heard that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the longer view here is that we took in lots of properties in the beginning. So it's like it was 1,000 properties, right? And so now we're left with stuff because we have the time to look at the stuff. And all we have is this unmodified Albany County Land Bank shabby sign that's not very graphically pleasing on an existing shabby building, as Joe pointed out. And so we have to say, oh my God, we're the only blight on that block. And then how do we market? Not necessarily market, because maybe there isn't a solution for that house, but there should be something about the house. I'm not suggesting we repair all the facades, but something needs to be done to the houses that we own cosmetically, just to tell the neighborhood that we're trying to do something. But then also, I think there should be some sort of, almost like a packet, or we're just thinking out loud here, but the sign leaves you nothing other than reaffirming, see, it's a land bank sign on a piece of blight. That's terrible, right? Mm-hmm. So there should be some, like, a user-friendly packet sign that says, here, take an application. When you're selling a house, you have this plastic thing. I know it won't last too long.
Or you could do a QR code now, Charlie. People could do QR codes and just scan it with their phones.
Yeah, and so time has come, at the very least, to look at the message of our signs, to say nothing of the graphics. We've never done anything with the sign other than to say it's the Albany County Land Bank. That's not our point. Our point is to say you should be interested in this property because it's affecting you. And so we need to have a better sign with better information, and thank you for that QR code thing, because you can dump all the information on the QR code, but the sign itself has to be graphically appealing to someone. There needs to be a sale sign, I used to have a sign that said, "This house can be your home." That was my tagline when I was doing Opportunity Homes. And the idea was to pique someone's interest. Wow, this house could be my home, like that. And so that was just a marketing thing. And so that's what we need to do, at the very least.
All
right,
and Sean,
and that aligns.
Sorry.
So I was going to say, I agree, Charlie, and it's something I've been thinking about in terms of the marketing and even our identity. Is it time for a refresh and an update? I'm not necessarily saying we walk away from who we are, but I think it's been 10 years. Let's take a look at how we're presenting ourselves to the community and make sure it reflects the right way. Right down to even
exactly. Exactly.
our URL, which is terribly long.
Yeah, and I remember we were talking years ago about, geez, we need to change the graphics on the sign because, you know, the lettering and all that. It's way more than that. It's time to reset with an eye towards promotion, advertising, you know. This house can be your home. That's the thing, not just reporting that this is the person that owns this crappy-looking building.
Yeah. No, thanks, Charlie. Thanks for that feedback. Joe, you were going to say?
Yeah, I don't want to, I guess, lose the forest for the trees on this one. Like we do want to have a larger, broad kind of strategy, but we need to also, like First Street, we have a building that might fall down and people don't know we even own it. Like I really suggest we focus on one or a subsect of properties, stabilize them how we want, like beautify them to the point that makes financial sense, and market them appropriately. And if we're going to hold them, one thing on First Street that was clear was we were holding these properties for the Legacy City program.
Yep.
No one there knows what that is, right? Like all they see is a vacant building. It's been vacant for many years. So like
Yeah, and we're pulling those out.
understood. But just I guess point being like let's not I guess lose sight of, you know, buildings that need our attention now for the overall process and program. I guess let's focus in on the buildings that need it the most and then kind of get best practices and put it out to the rest of the properties. That's my thought at least.
Yeah, I think, Joe, we have 18 properties that we have tagged for our own projects. And that's everything from demolition to rehabs too. So I'll send that out to the executive committee so you can see the ones that we're working on. But I know that after your visits there, the First Street properties, we moved those up. And I know that, you know, we talked about it as a matter of programming, but we took a look again after that walkthrough with the feedback you all had given, and just moving some things around and thinking about other sources of funds that we can come in and do some of this work with. So I very much appreciate that. I think for us, you know, having some overall strategy so that way you all we can report to you on what we're doing, you know, each month at our board meetings. But between board meetings that the team is identifying, you know, the properties to program and to advance forward. And I know to the point of, you know, blight on the neighborhood, you know, Charlie, we've talked about on Judson, that porch falling down. And so, and I had let you know when we talked briefly the other day that Lynette has already reached out to somebody, and we're going to take that porch down. We're going to get that porch fixed. And we're going to use the settlement money that we received from one of the banks, you know, after working with closely with the city, and we said we were going to make sure we spent that money as close to that zombie property as possible. And so this is going to be one of those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly, that's the case study of what we're talking about here. And that's what the land bank does. And so when we get granular first about the properties that we own, what do we need to do to them to make them user-friendly for the neighborhood and not a blight? And it may require money, and it can't always be from some other source. That's why we have some money, right? We're free to acquire properties. You know, we can pay cash for buildings if we wanted to. And similarly, if we look at a house and say, look, we need to spend $5,000 on the front of this house. Like, I don't care where the money comes from, but we need to do this for the good of the neighborhood. And then if we do have stuff in the pipeline, we need to have a sign that says so on the building. Coming soon, part of this. You know, be careful what you promise, because it takes 18 months or something, and then people go, oh, see, they didn't do it. But I think that's you know, when you talk about we're banking things for future projects, we need to look granularly about how we communicate that to the neighborhood. We know we're doing it, but they don't.
Yeah. No, understood. That's all very, very valuable and helpful feedback there. It's just some food for thought too. Something Lynette and I have, you know, been talking about. is identifying, how much of our resources we want to contribute to stabilizing something where, that need is. I mean, we, can't have necessarily an open checkbook, but she was, yeah, well, I think, she was when we were at the National Land Bank Network Conference, and I forget which land bank it was, but they, generally had a rule of thumb that, they would invest $20,000 into a property. One, to get it, somebody to find a new owner in it, or at the very worst, they take a hit of $20,000 to help address the impact to the neighborhood. And so that might be Charlie, the front
Right.
porch.
That's right. Yeah, we got to think that way.
All right. Okay.
But with that, we have the First Street example. Lynette admitted we don't have let's say the money wasn't programmed to do, I don't want to say engineering study, but a building condition survey. Not that we need it, but like there's certain properties we will need it, and that's going to dictate what the scope of work is we're putting into it or not putting into it. So I think we need to be thinking about programming a pot of money for this, not just demolition.
Yeah.
And in addition, part of this is preventative maintenance, like we discussed, Sean. Like, we're not having people go onto these roofs because we're concerned about the roofs, but at the same time, we're having water damage because no one's cleaning the drains out. So there's some basic stuff we can incorporate, and that might cost more money, but we need to know what that's going to cost, I guess, just to do the basic preventative maintenance inspections. And maybe that's another staff person, I don't know, but we need to figure that out and get a hold of it. So I guess give us the cost and let us see how bad it is. And then we'll go from
Well,
there.
I think I need to know from the board what your priorities are, given a laundry list of items. Is that where do you want to focus our attention to more immediately?
Well, we just discussed this. It's an IEP, like an individual educational program for each building. It's not that complicated. You said, what did you say? We had 18 buildings? What was the number you threw out there?
We have 18 buildings that we've targeted for programming right now.
Okay, and so these are things that we probably want to do something with. So, we use TAP to do, X thousands of dollars to do a scope of work project. That's easy, but maybe it's more granular about, look, we checked the roof, we need to do something on the facade, we got it, but each one of the 18 would be a different budget. It's not like, the 20,000 might be, we end up at that. But you do have to look at each building, because each building has a set of problems that are different from each one. Some of them are common, okay? But that's sort of, when you said we need to know what the laundry list is, you just start with the 18 buildings and do a checklist. Look, this building needs a roof, it needs something, and be very judicious about it, right? Because we want to make sure that it's not a building that eventually is going to fall down anyway, or, and that's a judgment call on the part of staff to look at the building. And luckily, we don't have 80 to look at, we have 18. So let's start with 5 of them. And, maybe if you want to get board input or committee input, do 5 of them first and say, when that looked at it, our new guy looked at it, whatever it is, and we think staff says we should do X, Y, and Z to these buildings, this one building, right? And then we can collectively say, let's spend the money or not,
All right, so why don't we start out with that? Why don't we go through, we've got the 18, and why don't we go through, and we'll I think TAP we still have a valid proposal for. If not, we'll get it updated, and we'll get scopes done for these 18. That way we have something to start with.
Yep, that's fine.
Sean, is it 18 that we have programmed or 18 that we have overall?
Well, I have 18 programmed. That'll help us understand more about what we actually need to do there. When I jump over overall, I'm looking here on our for sale list. I'm just waiting for a number to pop up here. We have 5 buildings for sale. And then I have to look at the not availables. The not availables, because they are either under option or title problems. We have 2 title problems. So we have 7 buildings that are not programmed, and we have 18 other buildings or sites that we have programming plans for, or we have into a grant program. I would just say that we start with those 18, since we're going to start making investments in them, to know where we need to put them in, and if we're going to come up short on resources, if we're going to make a decision to keep going with what we've leveraged so far.
My question, though, is if you got 5 for sale, have you done that process to get them ready for sale to maximize the appeal? Have you put any money into the 5 that's for sale, or you've just judged the
No.
point that they're ready to go, we can put the sign on them?
No, we've just listed them for sale.
Yeah, but I mean, has anybody put any eyes on them to see if they're showable? You know, maybe we need to put money into them in order to make them appealing to the, that's what I'm wondering.
No, we haven't done anything. We've taken the same approach that we've done in the past, is that we've just listed these and we keep them listed, and as other ones are more suited for a program, we pull them back and we start doing our work on them. But if we don't have a plan for them, we also make them available in case somebody else comes along with a better idea than we do at the moment.
So let's we'll go back to what you said. Let's just pick a few of the 18 that we know are already programmed. Take 5 of those, and let's do this as a
Yeah.
test case. A little pilot performance for the.
All right, yeah,
Hey.
we'll go through.
I was just going to say, I agree with Charlie. The only other thing I'd like to see, and I know, Sean, you're working on it, is as part of the real estate committee, if we're working on 5, that's great to identify, but I really want to see a list of all of our holdings, so we know what we're not looking at, because that's
Yeah,
also
sure.
something to
Committee
know.
needs to get that right. We need to know exactly what staff knows. These numbers should be right on our fingertips all the time.
Yeah, we'll send that over to you. It's always on our website, but we can absolutely pull that information out so it's right in front of you. All right.
Awesome. Appreciate
Yeah,
your
for
effort,
next-
Sean. I know this is a lot in one meeting.
Yeah. No, that's why, listen, this is why we're doing this, is because we haven't had the chance to sit down and talk about these things, you know, and get everybody's heads together. So,
Timely.
your
Timely.
point, yeah.
Interesting. You know, our credibility is on the line here.
Yeah, no, it's 10 years, and I think it's, you know, we're due, and I think, I'd like to think that's what you asked me to come here to do, is to get some of this stuff, you know, and ready for the next 10 years. So we'll keep going down that path. All right. Can we, anything else on those? Otherwise, I do want to keep going through some of these KPIs. I at least want to get through the top 10, and then I can circulate to you some other thoughts I have.
Did you send this to me, the thing that you're working off of? Because it's not part of this, it's not on the meeting stuff. We're meeting this.
Nope,
executive.
no, because,
You're just
no, 'cause
doing
I
this
just- I-
solely with us? Don't have anything to follow with you?
yep, we're just talking this out loud.
Okay, because it's hard to follow when we don't have can't tell the players without the program, you know? I mean, you're talking about important concepts here, but I don't have anything in front of me. I'm just listening.
All right. I mean, we can, we can either hold this back to next month and send everything around, or I can keep, you know, talking to you about what I'm.
Don't mind, it's just me to follow without your outline, you know?
Yeah, okay. All right, we left off on vacancy reduction in target neighborhoods. I have Joe's note here about the, you know, the flip side, of that. We'll have to eventually triage these down to, you know, what we can actually, manage and report back to you too. But number 4, on my top 10 list of KPIs was affordable housing units created. We have to report that to the state anyway, so I think that makes sense to keep it in there. We do that as part of our reporting on the grant programs and when we're creating housing units. The other one is grant dollars leverage per project, to help reflect our ability to attract external funding and maximize our resources. This one is a little bit of a harder piece to do, and it's probably something I need to sit down with Sam a little bit on, but about, you know, an indicator to help identify if we're actually helping to stabilize the neighborhood. I think the vacancy reduction in target neighborhoods and some way to measure neighborhood stabilization, I think they're interesting. I think that, and I like them, but I think conceptually they might be harder to track down. and identify that we have a direct impact on those, or there are things outside of our control. So I'll set that aside with that number 3. We're trying to, capture more information about the properties sold locally. We're tracking the number of visits to the office or interactions with people from our targeted neighborhoods, from our disadvantaged neighborhoods. And so we can continue to report on that. We don't collect necessarily demographic information on minority or women buying property. We'd have to look at what we would run into in terms of barriers, but we can consider asking people to self-identify and report some of that. And then the last ones are the same, properties acquired, sold, or demolished. Those are the last 3. So I'll send those pieces around, which I think are really mission-aligned metrics. Some are easy to work with, some we can implement relatively easily. Others are, like I said, those 2 about vacancy and stabilization might be a little bit harder and maybe are more of a talking point for us than necessarily a performance indicator, because there's so many other pieces that come into play there. So I'll send those around, but any thoughts about, indicators that you think we should be tracking more than we are, or more that I brought up?
After I see the list, maybe it'll pique my mind, but right now my head is spinning from all the ones you just told me.
Okay.
Which are all valid.
Well, I'll format that around a little bit, and but I wanted to do 2. Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had any other ideas that I could incorporate, because I'm going to go back into our data and give you a sense as to what we would be showing you in that process.
Good thought into this, and you made a nice, great. That's what we need. So then when we get the list, it'll pique our ideas. Hey, what about this? What about that? But now my head is spinning.
Yeah. All right. So I'll put that aside, and then I'm just doing a time check. It's 3:10 now. We got about another 20 minutes. I don't think we've done goal setting in some time, and I don't necessarily know if we necessarily want to do that now here today. It sounds like we have a little bit with the KPIs that's going to influence that. But there were any things, from the 4 of you that you want to make sure that we are setting ahead of us as we work towards 2026?
Well, you gave us the mission statement, the public authority thing that you sent us as part of the packet, right?
Yeah.
Thing on my screen here, our mission statement, and then the things that we're required to report that you sent us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm looking at the thing that Shelby sent us for this meeting.
Right.
So you're asking us, is there any other goals that we should be thinking about? So we looked at this city Senate, this part of our meeting. So we committee members are looking at this with the bullets. And I think, is this the public authority format that we're required to have it that way?
No, this is, I don't know. I mean, looks like the mission statement was done in 2015, and then maybe you had all updated this in 2023. So it was before my time, so I don't really have memory on this one.
For the committee's edification, I'm glad we have this here. So now we can copy it and think if we want to think, have we changed our mission in any way or anything like that? And we'd be happy to give you feedback on that, as well as the 7 or 8 or 10 bullets that you just orally presented to us. Once you give us those, then we will give you some creative feedback, putting all our heads together, and maybe we're going to change things a little bit. But to just today say, do we have any other goals? I'm not quite sure I could answer that right now.
Okay.
I'd like to make a suggestion. When I first joined the board, we had a governance committee, and then the governance committee had a retreat where we went through this type of stuff, right? We took a day. Where was it at? I think Norman Skill. I think it was at Norman Skill, and we went through this type of stuff, and we provided feedback. And I think that we probably should revisit that, or an idea like that, where we take you know, and if we have advance notice, we see if we can take some time to actually dedicate to doing this, because we could sit down in a session and get it done, or we could try to piecemeal it meeting by meeting, and that's going to take longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that you did that before. That was never something I ever came across or knew of, so I'm happy to do that.
Sean,
there's
the binder that
couple-
I gave Lynette, I got that binder at that retreat.
Yeah, I didn't know about that binder till Lynette gave it to me. I'd never seen that binder before, so good to know. We're gonna update that so we can do that in the form of a retreat, and then that might actually influence what I had here, which is a plan for either December. I said December or maybe even January. We're gonna have the attorneys come in and do an update. But when you did that retreat before, was it the whole board, or was it just? Did you say just the governance committee?
No,
No, it was the
retreat.
entire board.
Oh, you want to have
Okay.
everybody. This is one of those days. You know, it's almost necessary. You got to do it periodically. You know, it's a social event, but it's really it's a meaty thing. We come away, and the timing is perfect for it. I can't believe Natisha saved her binder. This is so great.
Yeah. All right. Then we'll start. Then I'll talk to the attorneys and I'll tell them hold still on coming and presenting at a meeting. It's not the right time to do it. We'll find a date in early 2026 to do a retreat. How much advance notice do you need for us to give you a date? Do you need a month, 2 months, 3 months for a full day?
Month is okay with me. Whatever the group wants to do.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
go ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say, as long as I have a week or two notice, I probably make it work.
Yeah,
I was
Alright.
gonna say a month notice should
Weekday?
be good for everyone.
Is a weekday okay?
Yes.
I like it better.
Yes.
yeah. And
Okay.
and I'd say,
You want to come in the weekend?
I don't know what everyone else's schedule looks like, but to me, it would make sense to try to get this in before the new year, so we're not delaying our goals into like the second quarter of the next year.
I agree, Joe. And Sean, we probably should just bring this up at the next board meeting so folks can get it on their account, can get it on their radar, but we can start scheduling it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Yeah.
All day.
Take a look.
All day. It'll be like 3 hours or something, you know, a lunch in 3 hours, not an all-day thing.
Yeah. All right. I'll have to check because I'll get a facilitator in to do this. I've got a facilitator that I worked with in the past who I think will be well suited to help us through all of this and get pieces back together again. I don't think that we'll have something ready for January 1st, to be quite honest, given timing and the holidays, but I think that we can pivot as needed. I think, we already have a budget in place, so we're a little behind on getting this done, or we're very early for 2027. I like to think we're very early for 2027, rather than we're late for 2026. But we'll look and see when we can coordinate schedules, and we'll get a date and time available out to everybody. And I'll bring it up at the board meeting.
Sounds good to me.
All right. The last item here on 4D is just an update on our 2026 insurance renewals. We got a bill back, and I have to pull the emails up. But I just want to let you know that Lynette and I, after meeting with our insurance carrier and going through their renewal for the year, a lot of questions came up, and we brought that back. We asked a lot of questions back to them, and I believe that we got our insurance bill down $20,000, and I can't remember if it's actually a reduction from last year. Initially, they said the good news was our rate went down, but our exposures went up. But when we went back and asked them exactly what they were looking for, there were some different numbers that we gave them related to the sales process and sales cycle that actually reduced our insurance exposure. So that was a positive step, an investment of probably an hour's worth of time on the phone and then a couple hours worth of time in the office netted us probably at least $20,000. So that's my last update for you. I don't have any other old business. We'll get working on a retreat if we can do it in December, we will. If not, we'll aim for January. And again, based on everybody's schedules. Other than that, real estate committee's meeting in 12 minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions for me from the executive committee? All right, hearing none, there's no business before this, more business before this committee. We can stand adjourned. We'll see the real estate committee back at 3:30.